Good evening and welcome to this week's NUFC Matters. I'm Steve Wraith.
And I'm Malcolm MacDonald.
And I'm John Gibson.
Lads, great to see you and welcome back to NUFC Matters. 8,000 viewers last week. We just want to thank everybody who tuned in. And if you want to subscribe to our channel, it's on NUFC Matters on YouTube, so please get onto that. We've also got a competition tonight, which we will be talking about a little bit later on, for a chance to win a Rafa Benitez signed programme from last season, so stay tuned for that. Lads, let's start with the Spurs game last weekend. Wow, how wrong could we have been?
What a surprise, and delighted, thrilled to bits, but irritated as well. And forget Ashley for one moment, forget Steve Bruce for one moment, let's think of the players. How could they lie down willingly and die at Norwich and then 1 week later put on the magnificent show of courage that they did at Spurs? Forget whether they were organised or not at Norwich. They lay down once
they were a rabble against Norwich, and they were
so
fabulous opposite to that.
Yeah, it was amazing, wasn't it? It was amazing. I mean, I predicted 4-0. I think you said 4-0.
Yeah.
We all expected Harry Kane and the boys to give us a hell of a beating.
Yeah, to absolutely wipe them out.
Fair play to Steve Bruce and the lads. They bounced back from that horrendous performance.
It was terrific, really, really terrific. I mean, I think
they didn't look in any trouble, did they?
No.
It didn't matter how much Spurs had the ball.
No, Joe.
They weren't troubling Newcastle in the slightest.
I think Malcolm as well, the slight change, Bruce tweaked the formation and went 3-4-3. He played three at the back and the three centre-halves, Malcolm were magnificent. But he took, instead of having three central midfield players, he took one out, which was Shelby, flattened out the midfield and went back to the way Rafa used to play up front, which was three up front, one through the middle and two out wide. And Almiron moving out wide instead of having to go through the middle on the shoulder of Joe Linton was so much better, so much more lively, seemed to know what he was doing instead of being the little boy lost that he was at Norwich. And I think it made a significant difference. But the three central defenders were absolutely out of this world.
Weren't they
Paul
just?
Dummett and Sean the Sellers.
Yeah.
I mean, they played it properly. I mean, have you seen Harry Kane be so nondescript? The only time he was noticed is when he dived for the penalty.
That's right. He really was invisible.
Yeah, he was.
Wasn't he, for the first hour or so?
Which is quite amazing. And the other guy that was playing 9, Joe Linton, got the winner first. Come on, Joe.
Yeah.
that was...
And he took it well.
He took it very well.
78% possession for Tottenham.
Couldn't care less.
20% possession for Newcastle. And I think that proves now, doesn't it, that, you just got to put the ball in the back of the net.
Of course you have. I mean, Rafa played that way, didn't he? The percentage, we always had the ball for a very short period of time when we finished 13th up. But we stifled them and we caught them on the break. And that's what happened here through the pace that we had.
And you could see the frustration just etched into their faces, couldn't you?
I tell you what amazed me, lads, as well, apart from the whole lot, was when Atsu come on, because the Saint wasn't able to last more than a quarter of an hour. When Atsu came on, I have not been a great fan of Atsu. I think he's often been like a headless chicken that doesn't know where he's going or what he's doing. I thought he was magnificent down there.
No, he's fantastic.
Thought he played, and the ball he played in for the goal, the touch on the ball he played in for the goal, the dink, was terrific.
Absolutely beautiful. It really was, and I had to do a double take to see that it was Atsu.
Yeah.
And then he reverted in the second half to his normal self when he was a ball was played to him and all he had to do was control it, turn, and he was 1 against 1 with then the keeper to beat.
Heavy touch.
And he just let it go way beyond his
He had a heavy
foot.
touch, didn't he?
Yeah. And the chance was lost. And I really do feel at this level of the game, it's got to be much better than that. And that maybe in Division 1 or Division 2, you might well see the miscontrols like that.
Yeah.
But in the Premiership, you go through all the clubs. You don't see players miscontrolling in that fashion, and I just feel that sometimes Newcastle can be a bit lightweight.
Yeah.
When it comes to the skills, and it's so frustrating. So frustrating because it's a glorious chance, and you have to work as a team so hard just to create. Look at Arsenal, the football that they played. They made one chance against Newcastle in the whole 90 minutes, and they scored from it. And so chances are few and far between.
Yeah.
Don't waste them. You can't afford to waste them in this modern day game that we're watching.
Basically, we moved from that to the cup game, and at the start of the season, I think we discussed this last week. Steve Bruce had said that he really did want to give the cup competitions a go, and it was something that we discussed with Lee Charney and Mike Ashley. Turned up at the ground last night. Obviously, the changes were evident. We'd already been given an indication there was going to be changes because of the injuries that we sustained over the last 7 days,
which I think were as much an excuse as they were the truth.
And obviously Leicester put their side out, and we were like, beads of sweat pouring down my head. Perez was there, who potentially could have embarrassed us. Jamie Vardy, Schmeichel in goal. I mean, it was literally, a lot of that title-winning team were there.
Yes.
So, from our perspective,
they were
they made 2 changes. We made 7 changes, and I could. In defence, I could understand that Joe Linton and Almiron didn't play because the one position we haven't got well covered in terms of players is centre forward. Yeah. Because Carroll's out and because Gale's out, we've only got Mutu, which is very lightweight. We haven't got cover there. Yeah. But elsewhere, we've got a lot of cover. But at the same time, if you say you're going to field your best side because you want to have a really good go in the cup, and you go into great detail about why can't Newcastle win a cup as well as stay up, and give Hull City as an example, as Steve did, that went to a cup final and went 2-0 up against Arsenal. Yeah. And then you pick a side, and where his Achilles heel was for me was the bench. Because if he can put Dubravka, Lascelles, Dummett and Atsu on the bench, surely they can start, because they might have to play during the game. And Atsu was called on in the first half because of Richie, having been exhausted, we were told, by his efforts down there. I think that left it, made a bit of a fool out of saying, we will field our best side and go for it. Having said all that, lads, I didn't think the boys did badly.
They didn't. No, what do you think, Mark?
They didn't do badly at all. But I'm still annoyed that Newcastle didn't put a somewhat better side out. And for heaven's sake, we're not in September yet. This is the first month of the season.
You hardly need a rest.
Yeah, people are being rested. They need games to get themselves up to absolute 100% fitness.
Yeah.
Not being rested. I honestly do not understand it. And supporters can say, well, you're taking an old-fashioned view of it. It's not old-fashioned at all. These guys, they're not playing to their full potential physically or mentally. And if you think back, when I played back in the early 1970s for Newcastle, it was a 13-man squad.
Yeah.
These days you're talking of double that number.
Yeah. One substitute.
And it was one substitute then, yes.
Isn't it ironic that against Spurs, when we didn't put out our full sides allegedly because of injuries, although most of the injured guys were actually sitting on the subs bench. But I found it hugely ironic that we couldn't field our best side because of injuries. And then what happens? Richie, one of the few ones we did play from the first team regulars, gets a bad injury. I mean, he was just about decapitated.
You've touched on that. With VAR, surely that would have been a red card.
Oh, I think it had to be a red card. Yes. Everybody thought it was a red card, bar the officials last night. I mean, it was, and I tell you what, Brendan Rodgers thought it was a red card because the guy never come out for the second half.
That's right.
Having
He took
done
him off.
what he did in the first half. Yeah, Brendan Rodgers is no fool, and he saw what that was all about. That was absolutely horrendous. That was really desperately bad.
And you're hoping it's not ankle ligaments, because that was what Steve Bruce had, basically said last night. That, there's three separate, injuries on his ankle, and it potentially could be ligaments, and that could be a long way off.
Long time. I mean, he isn't going to play against Watford, that's for certain, and we have a fortnight's rest. But if this is ligaments, it's much longer than that. And this guy, his attitude and everything about him is absolutely terrific. He'll play in any position that he's asked to play. He's really a winger who's been playing left full back or left wing back, where he had people running off him when he first was asked to do the job by Rafa. But he stuck at it and stopped that happening. And last night he's playing behind his chief support to the main striker.
What did you make of the way that Bruce set up last night? We've already praised him for the way that he set up and smothered Spurs at the weekend. But last night, I think, especially when we saw the teams, we were struggling to think what formation he was going to play. Now, obviously, the one area that we're very weak in, when Joe Linton's not playing as striker, Mutu was obviously chosen as the man up front. But it was a strange setup, having Richie just off him and Shelby in the middle. I took a little bit of criticism on social media because I'm not a big fan of Shelby, but I actually thought last night, from a defensive point of view, he played quite well last night. He deserved a bit of praise. But what did he make the setup, Mal, last night?
I found it an away setup being played at home.
Yeah.
There were three centre halves, and they played narrow, and where the fullbacks at Tottenham have been prepared to push up. Yeah. And the centre halves would spread across the pitch a little more. That last night the fullbacks stayed back, and it was five across the back. The midfield, and this happens when Shelby's playing, and he's a lovely lad, John Joe Shelby, but he annoys me so much in the way that he drops deep. And that brings the other midfield players back to keep in touch with him. It stops the back four from pushing up, because they can't go beyond the midfield, for heaven's sake, and leave them behind. And so thus you have this massive great gap to Mutu, who's up front. And Mutu was looking around going, I'm sort of stranded on a desert island here up front, and nobody was really getting into contact, which is except for Richie, who was running his socks off, and he was going both sides.
He doesn't know how to play any other way, does he? That's it.
And he was absolutely brilliant, and the tackle on him, I thought, was absolutely diabolical. And you think, oh, come on, all the rule changes and what have you, get right what's already there. And referees, you've got to be able to spot tackles like that, because you've got the livelihood of people in your hands.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly learned last night, if we didn't know it already, the worth of Joe Linton, because if he's not fit at the moment while Dale's out and Carroll's out, then we're desperately short up front.
Absolutely short up front, and it concerns me that Newcastle, they start the season with two players already injured. Why allow themselves to be in that situation where they're so limited forward wise, and so look, all the time, the whole squad, the whole of the coaching staff, and in fact all the supporters as well, are living in fear of a forward getting injured. And the fear, it's all around the pitch, it's all around the ground, and we shouldn't be living in that way in this modern age, where you've got a squad of at least 24, 26 players. For heaven's sake, why aren't there a couple of more forwards who can go and do the job? you know, and I was.
Yeah, all we've got is Joe Linton at 40 million, and
Right.
then a guy who's come back from loan,
Yeah.
which is Gale, and Carroll, who's
Carroll
never
that-
played since January, and in 8.5 seasons since leaving Newcastle, has played so little that
Yes.
he hasn't reached double
Yeah.
figures in one single season.
Yeah,
It's a crazy
So it's so
situation.
thin.
it is. It's a
And
bizarre,
we let
crazy
20 odd
situation.
goals leave the club
Yeah.
with Rondon and
Yeah.
Tevez.
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
I mean, we're really all vulnerable up there.
Let's touch on two more players from last night's game. Jethro Willems,
Yeah.
he's got to win some kind of prize for dive of the year.
I was going to say, Daly is no longer the greatest diver in this country. It's now Willems. I mean, I thought it was quite magnificent backward flip, wasn't it?
A lot
It
of
was
people
done with
missed
a
the
lot.
goal.
It
A lot
was
of
not
people actually
done with
missed the
style.
goal.
I did.
Did you? Was it?
Yeah, because I looked
Two
straight
people-
to the referee.
Yeah,
Are you going to give a penalty or not?
Yeah.
I mean,
And Schmeichel was appealing. He thought
Yeah.
the referee was going to book him
I
for
know,
diving, and
and-
Mudo was tugging the ways.
And then all of a
Yes.
sudden I thought, what's Mutu doing running out to the corner flag? And,
I tell you what, Willems has certainly made an impression on
He
the
has.
start at St James's, hasn't he? I mean, he was at fault on the Arsenal goal,
Yeah.
and then he's off the high dive board with Pike
Yeah.
for our goal last night.
yeah.
Watching the people around, he's certainly become something of a cult hero already, I think. I think a lot of fans have taken to him. So let's move on to Matty Longstaff. And I think the question I would like to ask you about him is, I mean, I thought last night, he skated around the action in the first half, but I thought the second half he got more into it and grew with confidence. Is he ready for the Premiership yet, do you think? I mean, he's had a run out in a friendly, which he did very well, and scored a cracking goal against
Yeah, he
the
did.
end.
He did.
But then last night, I don't think he did himself too much harm against one of the top 6 Premiership teams out there who played full strength, more or less. Is he ready, Malcolm, for the Premier League?
Not just yet, I don't think. He's not far off, albeit I would like to see him play without John Joe Shelvey in the side. I really do feel that John Joe Shelvey, quite probably without realising it, John Joe Shelvey plays totally for himself and doesn't realise the effect that he's having on teammates who are also in midfield. That John Joe Shelvey says, right, I want to play here just in front of the centre halves, and so you've got to withdraw, and it's a complete withdrawal process that's happening, and it leaves this massive great gap in front. It gives space to the opposition to play in. The centre halves are finding it dreadfully frustrating, and I've been watching this happen over and over and over again when Shelvey is in the side. You take Shelvey out, and Sean Longstaff, he pushes up, allows the centre halves to push up, and all of a sudden we're defending 20, 30 yards further up the field, and Sean Longstaff, and he's getting loads of balls, and he's feeding the other midfield players and creating all sorts. And I just wonder that you put Matt Longstaff into that situation alongside his brother Sean and say to Matty, "Go on, you go on, son. You be the forward running midfielder from the centre, with the others still getting forward on the wide position, and let Sean Longstaff just see what he wants to do as the playmaker." And I think that could really work. I don't think an inexperienced player like Matty Longstaff can play alongside such an experienced, controlling midfielder as John Joe Shelvey.
I think
Mark, before you give your comment, Martin Spalding on Facebook said Matty Longstaff starts ahead of Key 7 days a week for me. So I mean, he has got fans.
there's no question.
Yes.
I mean, first and
No
foremost,
question on that.
I think that the two Longstaffs are the future of Newcastle.
Yes.
These will be terrific players. Matty, for goodness sakes, only 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's just come too. His brother's, 21? I mean, before this year, before 2019, they were just buried in the hinterlands of Newcastle United, in the academy sides. They look as if they're going to be very, very good players. The decision Steve Bush is going to have to make with Matty is as this first half of the season goes on, he's got to either give him game time in the first team or let him in January go out on loan, as Sean did to Kilmarnock and Blackpool, and get some real experience and then come back here and dominate next season with us, without a shadow of doubt. As for this guy being ahead of Key, every day of the week I couldn't agree more with the guy that's just got in touch. Key is now become nondescript. He was quite decent and tidy and nice when he first came to us. This season, it's obvious Steve Bruce doesn't really rate him. He hasn't taken part. He was there last night, didn't play, didn't get off the bench, didn't get on. He only played in the disaster game, I think, at Norwich. He was then out for Spurs. I think he's very back in the rating. Matty has got to look to, you've got Sean and Hayden there, that one of those would have to go, and Shelby, who Shelby's Marmite. You either love him or you hate him. And for me, he hasn't got the legs, he can't run, he doesn't get round the pitch. And if you want to press high, which Newcastle United have wanted to do, have a press high, you've got to have legs as a midfielder to be able to press high. Shelby doesn't have legs. Shelby likes to sit there in front of the two centre-halves and just hit Hollywood balls. He doesn't get up and down, up and down, up and down. And in the modern game, he's becoming, I'm afraid, I'm a little bit worried, a bit of a dinosaur. Magnificent on his right, on a given day.
Yeah, and he can strike great passes, he can strike great shots.
But the rest of the time,
but his positional play, it completely ruins it for so much of the side. They're all being pulled out and disjointed because of him, and it's a shame. And the one thing I would say yesterday about Matty Longstaff was, even when it wasn't going for him, he never hid. And I've seen midfield players in the Newcastle side, when it's not going well, that they will go and hide and they get out of the situations. Matty Longstaff never did. There he was in his position, contesting, competing all of the while. And I thought, good for you. You've got heart, son. And I wanted to see more. And and the ideal time to play two youngsters together in the middle of the park is against the side that's bottom of the league. And Saturday sounds a good time for me.
We'll come to that towards the end of the show. Let's just look at the injury list. We've already touched on it a little bit about the frailties that we've got up front. But are you both concerned about the injuries that we've got piling up? Matt, obviously Matt Ritchie now, and Joe Linton. We're not 100% sure if he's going to be okay.
We can see precisely what happened with Ritchie, and it was a horrible tackle, and the referee let himself down as much as anybody else, to include Matt Ritchie. But nevertheless, do you notice how often players for next to nothing are collapsing into a heap? That when things aren't going quite well for them, down they go. And there are times when, when I was playing, we were taught it didn't matter how badly you were hobbling, get back first, and then you can get treatment later. But you don't just collapse in a heap in the opponent's penalty area and allow them to flood forward against a Newcastle side that's one short, because there's the man collapsed in the air. You do everything you can to get back, and then a cold sponge for 30 seconds, and all of a sudden they're up and running again. And I think
in your day, cold sponge got rid of a broken leg.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way it goes.
Absolutely, and so I'm really not happy about that at all. But also, I can't believe that there are so many long-term injuries. That we've got Dwight Gale there. He's injured. Injured from when? Injured from when, for heaven's sake? We've got Andy taken on Andy
Carroll.
He's
injured because it's a Premier League season. He was injured the last Premier League season.
Precisely. precisely, John.
Hamstrings.
You know that if Newcastle United were playing now in the Championship, I know Dwight Gale will be absolutely fit and raring to go. But
I think,
I think the Premiership frightens him.
John, for you?
I think on injuries, Joe Linton and Almiron will play on Saturday.
Okay.
They will be fit and they'll play. I mean, they could have played last night if it had been the European Cup final.
It would have been suicidal to play Joe Linton, certainly.
Totally, I couldn't agree more, 100%, because they are the reason I was highlighting them there, really, Steve, is because that is the position where we've got a mammoth worry. If either of those, and in particular Joe Linton, was out, where do we go? I am perturbed about Richie because I think his attitude epitomises everything that's good about Newcastle United on a good day. When Newcastle play well, as they did at Spurs, 7 or 8 of them play like Matt Ritchie's.
Yeah.
When 7 or 8 of them, I meant off the ball as well as on the ball, and the work rate and the desire and the rush and the commitment. When they don't play like that, we get a Norwich City. So and his position isn't greatly covered. The diver will cover it for us and against Watford if necessary. But I mean, yeah, it's 3 centre halves, terrific, wonderful at Spurs. But we have good cover there, you know. When you look at the way Fernandes played last night, and you've got Kieran Clark, we've got good cover at centre back.
Yes.
We haven't. Darlow's not as good as Dubrovka, but he's not bad. We've talked about 3 or 4 choices in the centre of midfield.
Yeah.
Wingers, you've still got Saint Maximin to come in.
Injured again though, but hopefully he can.
Well, yes, that has been. It's not a worry because we haven't really had him yet. We've seen 2 little cameos. And by the way, when you said Williams become the cult hero, this fella is, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
I mean, because of what he's done with the food bank, because he wrote so beautifully on his Twitter about down at Spurs and how the fans were wonderful and all that.
He's in touch with the modern day technology and he's
he
doing
is,
it
and
very
I
well.
tell you what, if Mike Ashley and Steve Bruce want to find out how to handle fans, let them go in a room with this fella, and this fella will tell them how to get good PR. He's excellent. He's a cult hero now, and he's only played about 12 minutes for Newcastle in the whole of his career so far.
That leads us nicely. You're touching on the fans, and empty for Ashley. Obviously, they were the people who led with the Magpie Group the boycott Arsenal campaign. They've come out with a statement today to say that they are now changing the name to Tune for Change, and it's going to be a long-term campaign for them to try and find a buyer for Newcastle United, to get somebody to come in and buy the club. So a bit of a change in tact from them, a long-term game that they're trying to look at. I'll come to you first, John. I mean, you've been around the block with Newcastle United for years. You've seen these protests come and go over the years against various regimes.
Absolutely.
Is there any point to them? Is there something that these people can do that they're not doing?
The point of them, without saying how to necessarily go about it, boycotts or no boycotts, the point is, if fans are regularly getting disgruntled or are getting dismissed and ignored, as they have done throughout the Ashley regime, they've got to make their voice heard. You can't be passive totally. Which way things will work, you see. In my day, back at the beginning of the 90s, when I was in the Magpie Group that John Hall was involved in, it was a different ball game.
Yeah.
The shares weren't held by one man and one man alone as they are now by Ashley.
Yeah.
We could go and pick off, if you had enough money and enough courage and enough bottle for a 2-year fight, you could go round individual shareholders and buy their shares at well over the odds until you had a controlling interest and could get rid of the other people. Now, it wasn't as simple as that, because some of the stuff that went on behind the scenes was absolutely frightening.
Yeah.
But it was possible. It is a different ball game now. And in lots of ways, the Newcastle fans are rather unique. Their greatest strength and their greatest weakness is their absolute loyalty to Newcastle United, which I understand, you understand, Steve, as a Geordie, and Malcolm, who's becoming on a Geordie.
The heart rules the head.
Yes, totally. And it's from cradle to grave, and it has been for me.
Yeah.
And it is hugely difficult to get enough fans to boycott watching Newcastle United to make a significant difference with the owner, because fans are so passionate. They're either passionate to stay away because it's the only way we're going to make an impact, or they're saying, I hate the regime, but I don't support the regime, I support the team. Not the regime, support the team. And then they go for that reason. And really, in the heart, both sets of supporters feel exactly the same way, but they've got different ways of tackling it. And it is very, very
drop
different.
in season tickets this season, and obviously last night we didn't see the record all-time low gate, but we still saw 22,000 there, which it was half a stadium closed.
Yes.
So there is some effect from Ashley's
without a shadow of doubt, and really, doesn't that show the desperation that there is on the terraces, that fans are really contemplating doing this and doing it, staying away on it, because that is not in the blood of Newcastle United fans. Normally, they're passionately, throughout all the years I've seen when they've rebelled against directors, they have still wished to support the team, but not the regime. It has now got to a horrible, horrible state, and the earlier Mike Ashley decides to take the money and go, the better, because really it is not going to work for him. And I can't believe for any moment anybody in his position can be getting any enjoyment out of owning a football club where you're so universally disliked. So quite what's in it for Mike Ashley now, I don't know, bar getting out of it.
Quite clearly money. Mal, your views?
Money.
Oh, without the shadow of doubt, yes. But
it's money, and a lot of the Mike Ashley empire all around the world is losing money hand over fist.
As I mentioned last week, he's had all the bad hits with Devon and all that, and he doesn't want to take another one here.
And Australian companies, American companies that he owns, that they've been struggling and losing him money. The one company that isn't losing him money is Newcastle United, and that's producing him, I think,
couple of comments from people,
very handsome amount of money.
Couple of comments from people on Facebook. Bobby Heppel said he's gutted about Bury Football Club. As far as Newcastle United are concerned, though, he feels that they're going to finish in a similar position to last year. He said 20% of possession away from home at Spurs. Who cares as long as you get the result?
Yes.
Thomas Heppel-White, says, what can you really do with a guy that owns 100% of the club? I agree with John. If he doesn't want to sell, I think he's had interest from other buyers, as we've seen before, but he definitely doesn't want to sell the club no matter what he says. So,
I mean, it is a very... I don't like talking about it, because when you get to my age, with one foot in the grave, you're seeing all the chances disappearing over the hill with the League Cup this season. He has another one, we're not going to do anything. And quite frankly, we can't continue to go on like that. But I mean, in a way... During my time at Newcastle, this feels as low as it's ever felt, regardless of results, because at one time Newcastle almost went in the old third division in the Magpie group through their takeover, and getting Kevin Keegan avoided that and brought us up. We have been a lot further down the pyramid than this, but this feels there's more lack of hope.
That's the
now. More lack of hope than there has been for an awful long time, and that's depressing. And while the result at Spurs was wonderful and I adore it, and please God let us beat Watford, it won't put hope back in this old heart.
Ray Brand says 10 seasons now he's boycotted Newcastle United because of Ashley. Leon Osman asks a question. He says, do you think all the criticism of Steve Bruce is fair? I've read some rubbish today about him and his coaches being at fault for injuries, the strength of the team yesterday, etc. He said Rafa had his fair share of injuries in his tenure, and the performances in the Cup were far worse than what we saw last night. For me, the team has looked well set up and organised the last two games. So, has the criticism of Bruce... I saw somebody put something out about him, wearing his tracksuit, not wearing a tie, and it is...
it can
escalate and get stupid, and social media feeds that. What do you guys think about?
Well, I think that can happen and does happen. But I mean, I said to Steve Bruce when he got the job, Why did he take it, Steve? I couldn't understand. He was well loved at Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
Sheffield Wednesday aren't Newcastle United, but they were historically a reasonably sized club.
Yeah.
They had a good chance of coming up. The fans loved them. He come in here, he knew what the score was because he's a Geordie that's got people up here. I don't think he honestly realised the depth of feeling against Ashley, how it really wretched up as much, and that has shocked him. But it gets obsessive with Bruce because Bruce is the second target for fans after Ashley because he's seen as Ashley's man.
Don't forget Lee Charnley.
Well, I would prefer perhaps to forget. I mean,
Malcolm, what about you? What do you know? Is it unfair to criticise Bruce so early on? You know,
it is, and management isn't an easy thing to do. It really isn't. You've got so much that you need to organise, and you have to get it right from the very beginning, because you can't take any days off at this level of football, and I think that Steve Bruce, with what we've seen in the last two games, Spurs and Leicester, that whatever he and his coaches are doing, it's going to get results. And we shouldn't knock that, and I think that people have got to. They've got to give Steve Bruce the opportunity to get the players organised and playing, get results in. Don't make the job any more difficult, because apart from anything, Steve Bruce has got to be. He's got to work for the owner, and that ain't easy.
Yeah.
Because there'll be all sorts of demands on him. I've had a somewhat similar owner myself when I managed Fulham in Ernie Clay, and they can pull you and turn you and twist you in all sorts of ways. And as much as anything, sometimes they do it quite purposely just to upset the apple cart and see what's going on.
I think one of the worries, Malcolm, and one of the things was that when you see a person like Ashley, who is so disliked by all the Newcastle United fans, allowing a world-class manager like Rafa Benitez to walk away from the club in frustration, a man that won the European Cup, managed Real Madrid, managed Liverpool, managed Chelsea when they won something, managed in Italy. When you see somebody like that walk out the door that is beloved of fans, and what a rarity that was to have the whole of the crowd at Newcastle all the time he was up here, even when we were 10 games last season without a win, etc., still firmly behind the manager because they believed he would get them out of the trouble, and he did. When the fans see Ashley let him go, the next guy that walks through the door isn't going to be given a chance. Is going to be tarnished straight away. And
worst of all, he had managed Sunderland before.
It's like
so that was always
but I don't think that's the greatest reason why there is a dislike for him. I don't think it helps.
The biggest thing is he's seen as a puppet.
Yes,
because he's we're gone from somebody who was in a constant battle with the owner
and was willing to openly battle him, which he was,
to somebody now who's just saying, yes, Mike, how high, Mike, when he's asked to jump.
Right, but
that's how he's perceived by the fans.
Yeah, but doesn't Mike Ashley though want somebody there who's going to be a figure that has to take the stick?
Yes.
And he's going to have a lot of stick aimed at him, and whilst it's aimed at Steve Bruce, it's not being aimed at
It's
Ashley.
quite clear. Mike Ashley owns the club.
Yeah.
Lee Charnley does the deals very slowly. Steve Nixon selects the players and tells Lee Charnley who he advises to buy. And Steve Bruce, basically his job is to coach the players, pick the players, and take the flak off the media.
And take the flak because he's the one that's on the front line.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to have to move on towards the end of the show now.
Right.
One more comment from Rob Rennick. He says, same here, 8 years I boycotted with my son. It's broken my heart, but sometimes in life you have to make a stand. The trouble is not enough will. Competition time. We are going to have a competition every week. We've got a chance to win this. It's a Chelsea programme from last season, signed on the front there by Rafa Benitez. All you need to do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. So if you go to NUFC Matters on YouTube, and click subscribe. That's all you have to do to enter. It takes less than 10 seconds to do that. What you'll have on the YouTube channel is a highlights program of what you've just watched now, with a few added extras. We've got a cracking Northeast band on this week called Sirocco, a video from them, so you'll be able to find them on Facebook and on Twitter. But subscribe to the YouTube channel and get yourself an opportunity to win a signed Rafa Benitez program. Final point, lads. Watford on Saturday. Let's have a prediction, and let's all try not to make the same mistake we did last week and all go for the same score.
I'll ask you a question, Steve, before we come to the prediction.
Yeah.
Before I make my prediction, will you please tell me which Newcastle United side is going to turn up? The one that played at Norwich or the one that played at Spurs? Then I'll tell you what the result will be.
I think the only person who can give the answer to that really is the club doctor and the club physio, because we've got a few injuries, haven't we? I think.
No, but I meant in terms of attitude.
Of attitude.
Of the team.
I'll go first. Newcastle United never make it easy. They've gone to Spurs when we all predicted they were going to get beat, and they came away with a 1-0 win. Saturday really should be on current form. Newcastle, after the last 2 games, should be a formality. Newcastle should do well, should get away with a 2-0 win. I'm going for a draw on Saturday. I'm going for a 1-1 draw.
Are you now? Because also what you didn't do was mention the game last night, and it was a reduced side.
Yeah.
And I thought that they played very well against a top quality Leicester side. I remember seeing Leicester in the second half at Stamford Bridge earlier in the season, and they were absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So the score's going to be
Chelsea. For me, I think that this is where Newcastle, they've got to go out and really spank Watford backsides, and I'm going to go 3-0.
Oh, there we go. I've got a feeling that 1-1, which is what you said, could be right, because Watford are due to get 8 points somewhere, and Newcastle tend to disappoint. But I'm going to go with the heart as well as the eyes, having seen them, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory.
Great stuff. Well, hopefully you're going to be right, or you're going to be right, and I'm going to be wrong, but we'll see. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us on Facebook and on Twitter. Don't forget, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get yourself a chance of winning this Rafa Benitez program, NUFC Matters, on YouTube. We're going to play out on the video on YouTube tonight with a local band called Sirocco. Give them a follow on Facebook and Twitter. But thanks very much for joining us. Goodbye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Time flew away, what a waste. And the things you said to me, oh, they stick. And you're up out again to get to me. And the anxiety and the jealousy, and in my mind, the curiosity. Your job on Thursday, 'cause you can. You got a key around your neck on a Wednesday, 'cause I'm your fun. And then you call me, it's like the 5th time. And now you packed your bags, not enough of the lies to give it all back to me. And you're falling in love, and who would want this modern relationship with the mediocre sex? There's more interesting you for taking photos of yourself, and you post them online for me.